act back and forth with each other. So, Jerry, do you just want to tell a little bit your background before we jump into it?
Um, I come from a pretty good family, I think. I come from a great family, and younger on, I was fortunate enough to have like all of my grandparents around. I had plenty of support. I did good in school and played sports, and I think I lost two key figures in my life, and I think that point forward, things kind of changed for me, and it was easier for me to, I, I fell into the criminal, into that element. So,
For me, uh, I was working because we want to just briefly say how we met, how we ever even encountered each other. I was working at our area community college at Rock Valley College. I was coordinating a program called Accelerating Opportunity, where students could come to get their GED as well as simultaneously obtain college credits. And Jerry joined that program. It was about 11 years ago. And to me, in that program, he really stood as a leader and someone who was passionate about education. And he was one of a very few who was able to graduate and complete that program. So that is initially where we met each other. So before we jump into our story and give some details of our experience, we just want to give a little bit of context about incarceration. So just to quickly say, during this part, these few slides at the beginning, which I'm going to go pretty quickly, these are all research based. These aren't our opinion. And at the end, we can provide some resources. But as you can see from this graph, by far, the United States has the highest incarceration rate among founding NATO countries. And there are many states within the United States that have far higher incarceration rates than entire countries. So you can see we've got 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated people. That number has increased by 500% since 1970. In 1980, there were roughly 500,000 people incarcerated in the US. Now there are 2.3 million people. This disproportionately targets Black people, other people of color, people living in poverty, and disabled people. The rise in prison commitment for drug offenses rose 350% between 1980 and 2010 due to harsh laws that were passed. And we're going to look really quickly at those. And 1 in 7 people in US prisons are serving a life sentence. In 2019, over half of the incarcerated people were serving sentences of 10 years or longer. And again, changes in sentencing law, not change in crime rate, is what has caused this increase. So really quickly, the 3 key pieces of laws that happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In the 70s, with Richard Nixon, he began what was known as the War on Drugs, and he established the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, in 1973. In 1994, so 21 years after that, his domestic policy advisor, John Ehrlichman, was interviewed, and he revealed that the war on drugs began as a racially motivated crusade. And here is a direct quote from him. He said, we knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Black people, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and Blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing them both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night in the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. The Knox Law, and some of us, especially any of us who like kind of grew up in the 80s, are very familiar with Just Say No and the DARE programs. So in 1986, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act was signed by Ronald Reagan. This established mandatory minimum sentencing schemes, including the infamous 100-to-1 ratio between crack and powder cocaine. It added a broad definition of conspiracy, and this is what really flooded our federal system with people who were convicted of low-level and nonviolent drug offenses. In understanding cocaine, powder cocaine was viewed as a wealthier white party drug, and crack was viewed, it was much cheaper and was viewed as a drug that was in the Black community. We do not have time to jump into this piece of it, but it also was deliberately pushed out into Black communities at that time during what was known as the crack epidemic. Just to give you a quick visual, so for example, and I'm not saying this is what you would be sentenced for this, but in that 100-to-1 ratio, say you had 3 grams of powder and maybe you were sentenced to 6 months for that. If you had 3 grams of crack, which was not more powerful, is the same, the identical thing, just in a different form, you would receive 600 months or 50 years. You could. So that is the disparity in the sentencing and those harsh laws. Then last one, 1994, President Bill Clinton signed the Violent Crime Control and Safe Streets Act. A lot of us probably remember that. And what we probably remember most from that is that 3 strikes, you're out law. But this bill featured the largest expansion of the federal death penalty, the gutting of habeas corpus, which is the constitutional right that protects against unlawful imprisonment, the evisceration of the exclusionary rule, which means evidence obtained in violation of your civil rights can't be used in courts, trying of 13-year-olds as adults, and putting 100,000 new cops on the street, which led to an explosion in racial profiling. It also included eliminating Pell Grants for incarcerated adults, implemented that 3 strikes law, and just a host of what they call, and we still hear it today, tough on crime laws. And that's that same narrative that brought about the disparity between crack and powder. It supported transferring youth to adult courts and popularized the myth of a Black child as a super predator. During that time, also shockingly long prison sentences for drug offenses, 10, 20, 30, life, even for a first-time offense, were commonplace. So that kind of sets the context for our story. And so to Jerry, February 6, 2017 comes around and you are arrested and booked here in Rockford in the Winnebago County Jail. Like I said, these laws are a direct component of your experience. Can you first explain the differences in uniforms that we see in this picture and how that played a role in your story and what sentence was on the table for you?
Well, the differences in the uniforms are the green ones, those are the state inmates, and the striped ones are federal inmates. Originally, I was a state inmate, and a few months into my incarceration, the feds picked up my case, and I was a federal inmate. And originally, I didn't get a time. I didn't have a chance. I wasn't a state inmate long enough to have a sentence on the table. But when I turned federal, it wasn't long, and it took. I think I had a 168 to 195 months on the table for my original, yeah, 180, 168 to 195 months originally. But when I decided to dispute that and fight the case, they would take away your points for responsibility, and it went from 195, 198 to 244 or something like that.
So what would that be in years for those of us who not counting really quick in the months?
168 to 195. I think it was like 14 to 17 or something like that, or 14 to 16, and then it went to like 16 to over 20.
When you first got locked up, did you feel that you had a lot of outside support? And did that change as time wore on?
I did originally feel like I had a lot of support, but I think also that as time went on, everybody else, their life kind of went on, and that support sort of petered out, kind of, leveled out, and not as many people were showing up for me like they had originally.
How did that affect you?
I mean, obviously, when you're in that situation, your mind is volatile, and you think everybody kind of don't care or they forgot about you, but you stuck and surrounded by chaos constantly. So your mind isn't as strong as it typically would be. You're not thinking as you typically would be because you're probably not in your best frame of mind. But yeah, it was hard because I probably got mad at some of my relatives. I thought people weren't showing up for me, but it's not always that, and it's also very expensive, you know. And okay, at this point, I want to know, how did you get involved, and what was that like?
So for me, at this point, we did not know each other well. Again, he was in my program, but I switched jobs during that time and kind of had lost track of him. But school was about to start, and I knew like if he was going to start school, he was going to wonder where I was because I was his advisor. And so I was concerned about him coming to the school and I wasn't going to be there. So I kind of looked for him and didn't find him. And then I did a little bit of research on my own and I discovered that he was in the jail. And I decided to write him a letter. I did not know how that was going to go. I had to, I looked up on the Winnebago County Jail site, which, by the way, this is his exact pod. This is a picture of the pod that he was in. But I looked up on the site, like how to write someone a letter. And I never knew if he would get it or not. But I wrote him a letter and I remember clearly it was August 1st, 2017. And did that mean anything to you, August 1st, 2017?
Yeah, because I thought I had actually gave my mother your phone number and asked her to contact you, and I was thinking like, wow, that was kind of quick for her to have contacted you and for you to have written me a letter and me have gotten it that fast. So when I called my mom and asked, she actually had never gave you the called you or contacted you yet. So just, I guess our minds was thinking about it, the same time, and you reached out to.
Um, yeah. And then I guess how we kind of started writing after that, I was like, well, you wrote me back and I actually Googled what to write to people who are incarcerated because I didn't know if you say like, oh, I went to the store, like if the person's like, oh, must be nice, I didn't know if what would be insulting or what would be hurtful or not, but I just read that, people locked up, they want to hear normal things, they want to hear what's going on. They just want connection to the outside world. And so I kind of hit on I kind of just always wanted to make you laugh. And so I was telling you funny stories about my job and the people I work with and the students I work with, and just, I guess, trying to make you laugh. And I think at one point, as we, kind of became more friends through our letters, I did say to you, I just want to make sure that I am standing where you can see me. I just wanted you to always, have a friend and have support.
I clearly remember.
Can you talk a little bit about the actual experience of jail, being incarcerated? Like, what parts stick out to you the most? And what are some things about it that people who haven't been probably wouldn't know?
Oh wow. I will say that they every month, and sometimes maybe twice a month, or even more, depending on what's going on in your pod, they do these shakedowns, and it could happen in the middle of the night, say 3 o'clock in the morning. You finally get to sleep, and all of a sudden, all the lights click on, and officers come out, and they like do this thorough search, and they destroy your room, and sometimes they take some of your belongings. They've taken books from you. They've taken random commissary items, and they put you in a room it's not in the outside, but it's outside temperature. So if it's 20 below, you sitting out there in your jumpsuit, freezing to death, sitting on a freezing concrete floor, and they had these I guess they are pepper guns, but they look like assault rifles, and they got the beam on them, and they like aiming them at you all the whole time. And there's been a couple of times where they shot people with them, but I hated that. It kind of kept me on edge all the time. I started at some point I started hiding my personal belongings on me because I couldn't afford to let them take it. And it was just unnerving. And also the violence sometimes. It's a lot of chaos. And you know I come from probably a very violent neighborhood, but I never want to normalize it. But being there, it was normalized. Like you could wake up in the morning, somebody's in their cell fighting, and it was just always tension. And it was you know yeah, it was traumatic, and it was always had you tense. And I don't know, for people there's a lot of things people don't know about jail. I mean, obviously people know they treat you horribly. I mean, it's very expensive. It's hard for your family to stay connected with you. It's hard for you. It's so expensive. It's hard for you to get your regular, just the simple things you need to get by, your regular hygiene products. Very expensive. And I mean, as you mentioned earlier, we lock up more people than anybody in the country. I mean, anybody in the world. I'm sorry, and it's more a capital thing than anything. It's not. They over police these areas, and I mean, they just warehouse the bodies and for profit. You know,
Can you tell us a little bit of difference? Like, what's the difference between jail and prison? Like the conditions wise, I think we all know you're held in jail and then you're sentenced to prison. But as far as conditions, where would most people rather be?
I think most people would rather be in prison because you got movement. You can acquire degrees in some places, and you can go to a gym. You can go outside. You can get fresh air. You're gonna get better medical care. Things are a lot cheaper. You may be able to you'd be able to live for a lot cheaper in a prison than you would be in a jail. A jail is where you're waiting to be sentenced, and prison is where you go once you've been sentenced.
I think for me, being on the other side of it, there are so many, most of us get our perception of incarceration from TV. And I actually remember our very first visit, and I was so nervous. It was a video visit, which is one of the misconceptions that we see on TV. You think you can decide to go visit someone and that you come in and you either sit down in a room and they're right there, or there's a plexiglass and they're right on the other side. It is not that way at all. Your visits have to be scheduled. You have to, the person you're visiting has to have requested it. They get one visit per week. When we first started, it was 30 minutes. They eventually cut that down to 20 minutes. And by the time we finished, like for a number of years, the visits were a total of 13 minutes. So one 13-minute visit per week on video phone. But I remember our first one, I sat down and like I said, I was very nervous. I didn't know you very well. And I was like, everything I know comes from the Shawshank Redemption. Is that right? But yeah, I think the things that I learned was there is no outside, there's no windows, there's no, other than the room that you mentioned, that's the outside temperature. You don't see the outside unless they take you out to a doctor. Even to go to court, they put you in like a panel fan. You don't see the outside world. You don't see the sunshine. You don't hear the rain outside. It's nothing. It's kind of like a big dog cage. And very little contact with the outside world. And then I think you mentioned the expense is, it's wild. You can, just to help your loved one have like a monthly subscription to their tablet so that they can read the news or listen to music or whatever, play games, and then to like get their hygiene, get your phone calls, all of that, you can pay a good, healthy mortgage payment every month, just helping your person get the basics. And I think lastly, I would say that every day there's just, of the person on the other side, outside, you just carry around this grief with you that other people don't understand. And you just end up having to mask it because people don't, it's not, it's a very common experience and yet it's not. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of support for it. According to a 2014 survey, approximately 356,000 incarcerated adults have serious mental illnesses compared to just 35,000 in state psychiatric hospitals. Being incarcerated causes trauma such as PTSD, anxiety, depression. Like you mentioned, that constantly having to be vigilant, constantly being afraid, then you're adding in overcrowding, the sensory deprivation, the unpredictable violence, like you mentioned, and separation from support systems. That's perfect conditions for severe trauma to develop. What did you observe around you about other detainees' mental health? And then how would you describe your own?
Well, I did see that there was definitely a mental health issue and not much support for that. Um, I saw a lot of people that could have they could have really used the proper mental health support. And if you were somebody having a breakdown or something like that, is the officers are probably going to meet that with violence. Like somebody that instead of, the proper help they get, they probably get beat up and stuck in a hole, which I'm sure only exacerbates that issue. And yeah, I saw it all the time. People that have breakdowns and, crying and um, just snapping out. But
Did you tell me that like they you saw people jump?
oh yeah, it felt like it was a trend. The last few months I was there, people would, I think 3 or 4 people literally jumped off of the top deck, and it was this big thing. This one guy jumped off and jumped on a visiting station and broke some of his ribs, and yeah.
Um, how would you how did you kind of keep your own mental health, or how would you describe it?
Well, it was definitely a struggle. I hated that place. Every day I woke up, I hated it. I hated it. And I had to play mind games with myself. And I used to have to tell myself every day this gonna pass. But I do remember waking up when them lights come on and realizing I was in that place and I would just be sick. And it was a lot of times where I never thought I was gonna get back out or never thought I was gonna see freedom again because I'm already middle aged. I'm not very healthy, and so it was hard. It was definitely it was a struggle trying to figure out how to make it through day to day. So I just took it day to day, I guess. And what was the impact on your mental health having somebody having me in there?
Um, like I said in the slide before, you're carrying a sorrow, like a secret sorrow with you all around. Um, it's watching your loved ones suffer, and you can't do anything about it. It's There's a lot of fear too. So what's gonna happen? I remember at one point, because communication can be so fragmented, um, you were just gone. I didn't hear from you for days, which was unusual, um, obviously. And I found out later that they took you. I hope it's okay that I say this, on. They put you in SEG to prep for your colonoscopy, and then took you for a colonoscopy. But I had no idea. I didn't know you were getting one. I didn't know you were taken. I didn't know why you were gone. And if you try to call the facility, they'll never give you any information, and they're usually be like pretty rude about it. Um, one time, or yeah, one time I was taking a nap. It was on a Sunday afternoon, and I woke up like straight up out of it, so nauseated, so nauseated. And I found out later, when you called me a little bit later, you said, or do you want to say what happened at that time and how you felt?
Yeah, I remember clearly. My lawyer at the time had came to see me, and he was giving me this bleak plea deal, and it was like it was nothing I could do. He basically said, "It's nothing you can do. This is it. You may as well sign this." And I had never been to prison before, and this was the longest I had ever been away incarcerated, and it made me dizzy and sick every time I think about it. Like every time my lawyer would come, it would probably make me sick and nauseated, and I'd start spiraling because I felt stuck. And
I read a research study that said, and I know obviously that being incarcerated takes years off the incarcerated person's life, but it takes an average of 2.6 years off the lifespan of their loved ones. other partner of their mom or their, whoever else is closely connected. So it has a huge harsh impact on both. So this is also in the jail where you were. This was a church service. So an important piece of mental health that we think is spiritual health. Can you talk a little bit about the spiritual, the religious programs that were in the jail? Did you participate? Did you find them helpful to you? What were those like?
I think initially I did, I participated and I thought they were helpful. But after a while I started seeing they kind of I wasn't looking at it that way at first, trying to be negative, but after a while, like they were like really condescending, and I could see racism. And for instance, we'd have our meetings with the church guys, in our classes, and at one point I was a Christian leader, and we'd had these meetings, and they'd always ask the guys if they were white, like, when's your court date? And they'd write their court dates down. They never ever asked me or anybody that was black the same question. Like they literally show up to court for them, but they wouldn't show up to court for us. And, it was just, I started seeing that they kind of, I guess these programs, they profited off of these programs. They made money and it was their funding, but they really weren't as helpful, not to me as a person of color, as they were to other guys. But so I
Was
could,
there was there something we remember about like a Christmas gift you guys got from a church?
oh yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah, they gave us this. They give us this little bag, and it would be like a couple of snacks, some chips, and candy bars, things of that sort. And it was like a book with Sudoku, or what? How do you say that? It had crossword puzzles and
Puzzles.
things like that in there. But it also had these recipes in there, and I thought this kind of I didn't like this coming from a church. These recipes would say things like, um, what you need to do is steal a pack of butter from the mess hall. Or it was like it was telling us to make the recipes. It was like being sarcastic, but I didn't. I thought it was kind of tasteless coming from a church, and it was like made me feel some kind of way.
I think for me, and I was raised in the church, and this was a this was like a crisis for me, to see again like someone I really cared about suffering like this. And a friend of mine was going through a really awful time in her life, and she shared a Bible verse with me from the Psalms. And it was like a human person speaking to God. And the verse was, there can be no joy until you act. There can be no joy until God, you decide to intervene. And I felt like, to me during this time, I took that verse in, because that was all I could feel. Like I couldn't feel this like great faith. We didn't know for almost the entire time you were in. We had no idea when this was going to end. No clue. So there was just this unknown. We figured it wasn't going to be good. And it was so hard to ever there was no completely good day. How can there be a good day, when you're suffering and we don't know when it's going to end? And I remember I wanted to do something fun for myself, which was kind of, I'm always either working or taking care of kids. but I went to the Art Institute in Chicago just by myself, and I was taking all kinds of pictures because I was going to send them to you. And I was just trying to soak it all in because we both love art. And I was trying to soak it all in for you, like you were there with me. And you called me when I was driving home. And I remember just crying. Like I just I couldn't enjoy it. And I was just like, there can be no joy until you come home. Um, it was just, I think this probably more than anything, like gave my faith like a big beating, as well as seeing kind of what happened to years in there, and that it wasn't it wasn't all it was portrayed to be. It wasn't There was encouragement for some people, but not for everybody. And that was really hard for me to hear as well. Um, can you talk about lockdowns in general, but then especially during COVID? What was that experience like, the lockdowns, and how did that affect the progress of your case?
Yeah, we were locked down quite a bit. It's hard when you already locked up, but then when you confine to your room for days at a time, sometimes we get that 1 hour a day, just man, and that's really not enough time to get the little things you may need to take a walk and get a shower. And when they let everybody out at the same time like that, it's hard to get a cup of coffee in the microwave and get a shower. And I mean, it's a lot of hours spent in the cell just thinking and stressing out and worrying, and and
This is from our local newspaper. So it says, quote, inmates spent 1,968 hours on lockdown in November 2017 and 1,905 hours locked down in December 2017. And a quote from our county sheriff said inmates are enduring 10 to 12 hours of lockdown on a daily basis. And he warned, we are going to get sued. What was it? What was it like then during COVID? Because it was locked down for sure.
yeah, I mean, we were all terrified of COVID, and but I knew that it really wasn't anywhere I could run from it. You could wear your mask, but you in a living space with 60 different people, and people coming in and out, and officers coming in and out. I knew I was gonna get it. And yeah, it was scary. And at one point I remember, if you get it, they're not gonna really do anything to help you. They're just gonna send you to SIG. Like they sent me to SIG one time, and I got asthma, and I complained about my asthma problems, and they known it had been an ongoing issue with me, my asthma. And so they just immediately come and get me later on that night and send me to SIG. And even if you are sick with COVID and SIG, they really not doing much to help you. They just, isolating you. So I think everybody at one point, I'm pretty sure it was the whole pod had COVID. You can look around and it just looked like everybody looked like death, and it just looked bad. And but the consensus was nobody was going to say anything because we didn't want to, who want to go to SIG? Everybody just suffered and just went through it and dealt with it, and it was kind of rough, but
I do remember at that time, the first time, because you had it, how many times did you have it in there?
four times.
Um, I think it was the first time, and you said somebody just passed out on the floor, and they just left them on the floor for a good 30 minutes before attending to them. The other thing that it really affected, obviously, was visiting time. We were not allowed to visit for 10 months. So we didn't even see each other on video for 10 months. And then all of the court cases were suspended. After a while, they started doing them by phone, but I technically did not see you in person, like in court, for two years. And I
Yeah.
really remember the first time that I saw you, like across the courtroom after 2 years, like I could just see a huge difference in your physical health. You did not look well um during that time. And again, just being cut off even from having our 13-minute video visits for close to a year. So we had transitioned in this time, as probably everybody can tell, from acquaintances to good friends to best friends, and then finally to romantic partners. We kind of kept it quiet just between ourselves for a while, and the first person you told was your mom, and you told me about it afterwards, and you said, like, mom, I fell in love in jail, to mess with her a little bit. I have met her, and plus, they knew it was me. But can you talk a little bit what it's like to try to sustain a romantic partner relationship while you're incarcerated? What did you observe around you, with the other men around you on the pod, trying to keep relationships going? What impact did incarceration have on that?
Well, I had it really good because you were great during the whole process. It was easy because I feel like with you and I, it was so hard there, and I just leaned on you, and you just let me the whole time, and that made it easy for me. And but sometimes at the same time, I could look around and feel sorry for a lot of the guys. Like I saw so many people lose their relationships. Like I guess that is a hard thing to deal with if you know your partner's gonna be locked up. Most people don't want to sign up for that. Nobody really wants that. And yeah, I saw many people, hanging up the phone, heads down, and a lot of people asking me for advice at times because maybe they thought I knew something, but I was just lucky to have somebody that to lean on like that. But most people don't.
Oops. I'm sorry. I don't know why our slides are going ahead. Go ahead, babe. Keep talking.
I mean, like I say, I was super lucky to have,
What things did you felt like you did? Because you're kind of selling yourself short, just saying it was all me who kept it going. What things did you do to maintain a relationship? Because
I
you
I
did.
I think I wrote a lot. I got some pretty nice pictures drawn. I mean, we communicated constantly. I think I learned to master communication with you during that time, and that was super helpful.
Were you worried at all if it would survive, if our relationship would survive this? Did you have any worries?
I think around my fifth year, I'm not gonna say I worried that we wouldn't survive, but I think around my fifth year, I kind of dropped off because I think at that point I accepted that I was gonna be gone. I thought that I was gonna be gone. I accepted it, and I was like, and it kind of depressed me that I had somebody, but I was gonna have to wait probably another 8 years, 7, 8 years before I could even make it, be with you. So it kind of depressed me, and I didn't. I kind of Yeah, it kind of just threw me off a little bit.
Um, I think for me, I want to, I didn't ever feel like giving up. Um, that didn't enter my mind. Um, this is a person and this is my person. So what was I gonna do? It's not like I want to go find somebody else. But yeah, I think the unknown, I almost had to just put that in a box in my mind and put it up on the shelf that the time was unknown. And I love this picture. I included this picture because we always say, like, when you come home, we're gonna go get married on the beach. And I think I just held that in my head all that time of like, I envision us on the beach. And the other thing that I envisioned over and over and over again, I I don't know why, but I just didn't picture you going to prison. I always thought I was going to come pick you up at the bond out at the jail. I would be there. And I just hung on to that. And I think those are the things that kept me going, thinking that I was going to pick you up at bond out and then we were going to make it to the beach someday. And like you said, we communicated a lot. You gave me a lot of credit there, but you were everything to me during that time while you were gone. My father died. I felt very alone during that time, and I leaned on you hard. A lot of issues. My son has disabilities, and a lot of issues with that, and just turmoil, and um, to put my favorite cat to sleep. You know, a lot of things, and just will lean on you and always there for me. So we get into we're coming to the end of your sentence. What is the Equal Act, and how did that affect your case?
Well, it was a bill that actually died in the Senate. I guess they never voted on it, but it was a bill that would eliminate the disparity between crack and powder. So, and that dramatically reduced my sentence from, it would have, but I mean, it still got reduced, but it would have taken my sentence from 168 to 195 months down to 90 to 97 months. And actually, um, since it died in the Senate, I guess Joe Biden, he circumvented, the Senate, and he just had Merrick Garland press forward and start prosecuting everybody one to one. So I was just fortunate. I was in the right place, right time. Well, not really, but yeah, I kind of got lucky on that one.
Broke the luck.
Otherwise, I'd still be, I'd still probably have 4 years, maybe 5 years, maybe to go.
Um, so we get to that point where they give you this reduced deal on the table that you took. And this is an actual courtroom that we would go to. I would I always sat over on that bench to the left. I remember, and you would be over at this table on the right. But the day of your sentencing, I remember sitting on the bench in the front on the right. But can you talk a little bit about what that day of sentencing was like? Um, First of all, I'll say I came to this courtroom every month for for your status. And I kind of forgot to say this earlier. I think this was one of the more traumatic parts for me in this whole ordeal, because this court, the federal court, is very different than the county court. The county court is loud, it's busy, there's just constant stream of people going in and out. The federal court is very quiet. It is marble, all marble inside. You obviously you go through security, but when you go upstairs to the courtrooms, there's a sign posted outside the courtroom of the judge's name and all of the cases that he will be seeing that day. And to see your name there, and the case was the United States versus Jerry T. Hatchett. And I can't even describe the pit in my stomach to just see like the United States. And then you would go in and the prosecution would be at these tables and then at the podium on the left, and the defense would be at the table and the podium on the right. And you guys would be out in the hall in like a cage, right? Because we could hear a very loud like unlocking of a cage, and you would come in, you would be shackled. And it was very difficult because every person, prosecution, defense, court reporter, the U.S. Marshals, and the judge, everyone involved was white. And then I would see other people come in for their time slots too. And then you have people in jumpsuits shackled, and almost everyone. And just to hear like you being let out of this big cage, that was super traumatic every time. But sentencing day, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And yeah.
Well, like you say, the courtroom is very intimidating to start off with. And the judges as well, they kind of sit up high, and definitely it wasn't lost on me that, the prosecutors were white, not a black person in the room, but myself being shackled up. And it was terrifying because, at the last minute, I got this deal of 97 months, but it wasn't necessarily mandatory. The judge didn't have to accept that. And so I was, I didn't know what to expect going in because I was terrified of this particular judge. And I'm sure everybody in the system that knows this particular judge was terrified of him as well. And it was just a real nerve-wracking, it's hard to sleep. I remember I sat up all night. I didn't sleep the night before, and I had to write an elocution speech. And I remember I wrote that speech over 6 times, maybe throughout the course of the night. And, before I knew it, it was time to go get up and go to court. But yeah, I was super duper nervous when
I remember I was sitting with your parents, and this judge, he talked he talked really lovingly about those old guidelines, the very long sentence, and he just kept mentioning it over and over, and I was like, oh, that he's gonna give him that. And you gave your elocution, and I did not know what you were gonna say, and I promise, I know your parents and I cried, but I I looked at other people's faces, the prosecution, I looked at the marshals, I looked at your lawyer. I don't think anybody had ever heard an elocution like that before. It was really, it was very authentic and genuine and truly heartfelt. And the judge ended up, like, we thought it was going to be 97 months. And what did he end up giving you?
he gave me 94 months.
And I think for me, then he kept talking. What was odd was he said where the federal prison that he was going to send you to. And then they took you out. You asked if you could hug us. You said, "Could I hug my family?" They said no, and they took you out. I thought you had another 94 months left. I didn't know. And your lawyer came, he took us out in the hall, and he said there's no time for him to go to that other facility. They wouldn't even have time for orientation. This was in July, and he said he's gonna be home before Christmas. In fact, he could be home in a month. And it went from like the worst day to the best day, for sure. So then we had a countdown of we finally found out, because I kept looking at a website, the federal site, and it had an undetermined date of your release, until one day we were on the phone together and I checked and it said October 11, 2023. So then we had a day's countdown. And coming home, what this picture on the left is your first day at home. Actually, yeah, I don't know, you must have changed shirts, because the picture on the right is your first 30 minutes home. Our cat liked you right away and got up on your lap. When you first got home, what were some of the best things? And then what were some of the hardest things?
Well, some of the best things were I felt home immediately. When I came through the door, I saw put pictures of my grandparents and my parents, and I went to the room. You had already had the closet lined with all of my clothes, and I mean, the bed was so comfortable, and just everything. I got to eat regular food. I got to be with my person. We had these big bath towels that you could probably drive a school bus with, that I still love very much, and everything. It was just fine relief. I knew I was home, and I was finally home, so it was a good moment. I think some of the hardest things was probably dealing with my health issues and trying to get my footing financially. That was probably, my health and finances. Those are probably the hardest things for me since I've been home.
Can you say too, there was a penalty that the judge gave you that has made your coming home
Yeah, I
difficult?
would have I would have went back to school. I was actually enrolled in school when I was arrested. I was still a student. And yeah, he penalized me to 5 years with no federal assistance, and I can't get financial aid or anything like that for another 3 years, I guess. So that kind of killed school for me. That took that off of the table. Any other programs I was trying to get into.
Yeah, we have a lot of like fully funded programs in our area, like through Workforce Connection and other things, that while you were waiting to get your SSI reinstated, which we're still waiting for 2 years later, you could have been going to school, but because he threw that penalty out, you have not been able to attend school. You couldn't get any sort of like licensure, like your CDL or anything that you wanted to do. So I think I just reviewing my notes before us doing this presentation on Friday, I saw something that said there are almost 44,000 laws or legal barriers to reentry. And I had to sit with that. Like, obviously, all 44,000 don't apply to every single person, but it's so difficult. We make reentry next to impossible to get people, so they go back. And I feel like that was a little insidious one, throwing that in there, that you can't continue you can't get any funding for education. So how can you do better? And that part's been difficult. I think for me, thinking about you coming home, and I first have to say, my my dream, my vision came through. I did, and I wanted to have a picture of Bondo on the slide, but I couldn't find a picture of Winnebago County Bondo. But I did. I got to pick you up at Bondo, like I had always anticipated. And I'll never forget that first day. And I think preparing for you to come home, I didn't want it to feel like this was like a stop off or a temporary, or you're just like, oh, okay, here's a drawer or something. I really wanted this to be like you're walking into your house. Um, Even though you'd never been here, I had purchased this house while you were gone, and I know I'd shown you pictures and even done some little video tours, but I just wanted it to feel like your own place. Um, I think for me, some of the hardest things is I'm a big optimist. And so I thought, oh, our first year of you coming home, we're going to just be rebuilding your life. And I would have to say, not that we didn't have good times, not that we had great times, but I would say the first year was just, it was a shock. It was a complete shock. Um, so many, we didn't even have time in this presentation to talk about all the shocking things that happened your first year home. But just having to adjust expectations. And I remember something that I always wanted to do, just something really simple while you were gone, was be able to go to breakfast with you. And I felt that was something I pushed way too fast. I think you'd been home less than a week and we had to go somewhere. And I was like, oh, let's go to breakfast at, one of my favorite places. And I felt really bad because that was very difficult for you. You were so uncomfortable to be in a restaurant, to be in a public place. We belong to the Y, and I know, like, now we go to the Y all the time and it's fine. But when you first came home, that noise and all of that was just too much.
It was
Um,
weird.
yeah, I remember our first Christmas. You'd been home, what, like 6 weeks, and you spent Christmas morning in the ER. It was a lot. And I think it is so happy when you come home. I do remember that as mostly just a super happy time, but there was just the adjustment and me not fully understanding how traumatized you really were, to come home.
I was nervous about going to the grocery store. It kind of made me, I didn't anticipate that either. I didn't think that I was going to go to the grocery store and almost have a anxiety attack, but yeah, that's what happened.
One of your biggest goals on reentering was to connect with your family and rebuild relationships with your kids. So this picture on the left, this is 2 days after you got home. These are your 5 kids with us. We're at your mom and dad's, and also your grandson. And then the picture on the right is from this past spring. That's your youngest son graduating. Can you talk a little bit, like, how has that gone? Is it what you expected?
Well, not at all. I mean, when I was away, you can see the hole, that you've left when you're going away like that. I could see it. I can feel it when I call. I can feel. And I mean, I just thought that my presence, me returning home, I was gonna be able to fill that hole. But I've been home for a couple years, and I don't even know if that hole is ever gonna fill. I don't know if, that time I lost was so valuable. And I mean, they've grown into their own people, completely independent of me. And yeah, that's a hard one because I reach out, but it's not always it's not always reciprocated. So I mean, I'm still trying, but it didn't pan out how I thought it would.
I think of that same thing I mentioned earlier about, I don't know about for children, but the losing the lifespan. I've almost, yeah, you missed a couple graduations, you missed birthdays, and it's hard. It's hard to try to, like you say, fill that hole when you get back. Um, if you had therapy or mental health, I will say that has been one of the things that has been very difficult for you to get. You had been assigned some mental health through your clinic and it never panned out. The guy canceled on you both times you were supposed to go. And so that was difficult. But if you did were able to get therapy or mental health, what are some key areas that you'd want to work through or that you think people re-entering, what mental health help do people re-entering need the
Well,
most?
I would say for sure some kind of anger management. And I think for a lot of us it's like a stigma on getting mental health help or whatever. But yeah, it's a lot of PTSD in there. And I mean, it's a lot of mental things that need to be addressed when you after you come home from being in jail so long. But I would say anger management would probably be the main one, because I think we push so much down during that time. And it's not healthy always to push it down like that, because it can always come up. So
I know when you work on, you lost people outside to violence. You lost one of your best friends right around, was it the same day or same weekend as the George Floyd murder? You had a friend who was murdered, and I just always felt that you just had to, you didn't even get to grieve or anything, just keep going. Um,
yeah, I lost quite a few people. And you're right, you can't really grieve because you got to figure out how you're going to live day to day. And you got to push through your days. And yeah, I still struggle with it.
what things have had the most positive impact on your mental health since coming home? And what would you recommend to others who are re-entering, or if there's any people, I don't know who else all in the audience, but if there are people there who help others re-enter, what are some positive impacts on your mental health or recommendations you've got?
Well, I mean, hopefully everybody has support system at home, some family or some, which has been truly extremely helpful to me. But also everybody, at one point or another had a dream or something they loved to do, maybe when they were younger. I would say go back to, doing what you love. I've always had a love of cars, and, ever since I was a little, a child. And so I like to spend my hours and fiddling with my hobby. So, and I think that's been super helpful to me mentally.
I've noticed the like a huge difference in this. So you bought this, uh it's 1984, right, babe?
Yeah.
Corvette. A 1984 Corvette in October. of last year. So you've had it a little over a year. And I've noticed the hugest difference in your mental health. You got something to occupy your mind. Um, we got a lot of talk about the what we're gonna color, we're gonna paint it. And oh, I just noticed you being so excited and enthusiastic. And I have to give you a shout out, though you were not allowed to go to school, you took yourself to school. The way that I've watched you learn and teach yourself how to paint, how to work on the cars, you've got a whole automotive education for yourself. And the other thing is, this has had an effect on your physical health too, right? In a positive way, working on the car.
I mean, yes and no, because I'm in tremendous pain, I think, in my hands. So yeah, this is not something I could ever do again or something I could do for a career. I mean,
Didn't it
it
lower it
it
got
did.
really your
I think
diabetes, right?
yeah, because I wouldn't eat. I go out there in the morning and I stopped eating. I just focused on this guy. Before I knew it, it was 6 o'clock, and I better go in and eat dinner. But I'd skip the whole food for the whole day out there with this guy.
You said something when we were prepping for this presentation for people re-entering that I really liked, and it basically was just like, what find the joy that was stolen from you in incarceration, like re-find that, what they took away, and get that back for yourself. And I guess I feel like every time I see that car, that's kind of what I think about it, is you reclaiming what was stolen from you, because you used to tell me all the time in jail you had this dream over and over and over again that your car was being stolen. And I'm like looking up the meaning to dreams, and I was like, that means a piece of your life has been stolen. And now I see, like, you got your car, you got that piece that was in your heart stolen from you, and are putting it back. And I don't know, it makes me super happy too, to see that. So last couple of slides, and then if people have questions or thoughts, we'd love to take them. But in addition to incarceration, there's a real problem with recidivism, because as you can hear, our incarceration in the United States is not rehabilitative at all. So major factors are mental health issues, 57%. With serious mental health problems return to prison within 5 years. Employment is a huge one. 72% of offenders who've not, I don't like to say offenders, of incarcerated adults who've never had full-time employment return to a prison within 2 years. Substance abuse or substance use disorder is a huge impact. And then education, like we've been talking about. So withholding education or not being able to obtain education is a huge factor in people falling back into the system. And then did you want to just review these mental health reminders for people who have been impacted?
Sure. Um, One, you don't always have to be strong all the time. You've got to learn to make yourself a priority, and it's not selfish. You are worthy of rest. You are the expert on your own experiences. You are allowed to put your mental health first, and asking for help is not a sign of weakness.
We also really wanted to share, if this is a personal interest to you, or like if you're an organization that assists people, these are some resources that have been great for us. You can follow them on social media, and they just provide a wealth of information on this topic. my mainstay while you were gone was Families Against Mandatory Minimums. That's where I got so much of my updates and information, and they were the ones who fought so hard for the Equal Act, and they are still fighting for it. The Marshall Project, awesome nonpartisan news organization. Equal Justice Initiative, Prison Policy Initiative gives so much just information, a lot of the facts at the beginning that we shared. And then if you, especially if you're in Illinois and you are helping someone re-enter, there is something called Mapping Your Future. It's a free guide, and it's just got a wealth of information on helping people re-enter. We used it. I printed off a copy and sent it to you. And we used it together as a help in re-entering, and it was really, really valuable. We would love to take any questions if anyone has any. And also, if you would not mind, just as a really quick survey, if you guys wouldn't mind taking that. And maybe I should, oops, I'm sorry, let me go back to the code so you can get that. I was trying to see what's in the chat, but maybe Danielle, you can tell me what's in the chat.
100%. I just want to thank you guys again. I know that a lot of that is probably emotional to talk about, but we really, really value your experience, and it's very eye-opening, and I'm really happy you two found each other.
Oh, thank you. We are too.
Yeah. I do see one, aside from questions about the recording from earlier, what are some ways people can support incarcerated individuals if they don't have financial resources?
I would say writing or visits. Anybody's happy to get mail. A lot of people don't get mail, and when that mail call comes, you the man if you got some mail.
There are organizations too where you can connect with incarcerated people to send mail. I don't have any off the top of my head, but there definitely are. Like I said, we had known each other beforehand, but yeah, you can definitely connect through letters and again visits.
What things can be done to support significant others and children of incarcerated folks?
I mean, I'd say for the children, I would say, maybe they may need a role model or somebody to step in as maybe a mentor or something like that. Or, and for the significant other, I would guess, I mean, just check in on them, see how they, see how they doing,
I
see what they may need.
I would love to see, not to put anything else on NAMI, but I would love to see like a support group, because I there's such a stigma attached to it, and I was never ever ashamed of Jerry or his situation, but I was defensive about it. So I was like of him. So I was very careful who I could even share with, particularly because it's not as common among white people to have somebody incarcerated. So there's a bigger stigma attached. And fortunately for me, I had a handful of some really quality friends who I could trust to tell, but they did not understand. They still couldn't understand what it was like. I made friends with a couple women in line at the jail, one of whom I'm friends with to this day, because that I felt like that's the only person who can understand what it feels like is if you got somebody there too. So I I wish, I don't know if there's like a support group in the area, but I would hope there could be, I'd be interested in helping if anybody wants to start one. Because I think that would be huge, because I was just having to do it kind of on my own.
You took the thought right out of me and Eric's heads.
It's super lonely. So yeah.
Someone says, I'm a peer navigator and work with incarcerated folks, and they truly look forward to my weekly visits. I would be interested also.
Ooh,
Thank
that
you.
would be great. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Any other folks have questions for Jerry and Alice? And if you want to come off mute, you can as well, or you can put them in the chat, whichever you're more comfortable with. I know we got about 5 minutes left. You guys are timely. Oh,
Yeah, yes, I have a question.
sure.
Um, I am presently advocating for my son, and he's been incarcerated now for about 13 months, and he is dealing with mental illness to where he won't use the devices or any of that. And they are fully aware of this, and he has not had any contact with any loved one since for 12 or 13 months. He's just sitting in that room, and I'm just trying to see if there's any advice on any things that I can do. Because I have not really, it seems like I just kind of been advocating by myself with that. So I'm sure he's worse now than what he was before he went in, because he was trying, and I was, but to lock him in a room like that and to not even, he doesn't come out, doesn't shower. Like I said, has not used any other devices or had any contact with anybody for 12 or 13 months. And I've sent letters and pleaded and for things for them to help me, because my goal was to try to help him to get better. But I don't think that's their goal. He's been on a wait list for DBHD for seems like about 12 months. And so I don't know what else that I can do. So is there any advice for me in that situation?
Does he get any visits?
No, they don't do at that particular facility, they gave the inmates laptops, and that's at their discretion to use it. And they know, because he hears stuff, he's complaining about hearing stuff and ain't that. They know the predicament that he's in. And I was informed by the guy who's over the jail, well, wherever they put him at, maybe they'll let you see him, because I'm not gonna let you see him, and that's just it. So it's like he just got to do what the other inmates do. If he wants to see you, he's gonna have to use a laptop. Now, mind, this has been about 12 months, and everybody is aware of how he is doing in there, because I've talked to other, the trustees, or just different people who've been in and out, and they're all just kind of, I'm getting the same type of report. So I guess my question is now, what could I do to possibly get some type of help, or what can I do?
I'm looking at my former colleague. Do you want to weigh in, Eric? Because I ended up, I had it was slightly different, though I will say one of my friends, the one who I'm friends with, who I met in the line, she was in this predicament with her son also. He was there and had mental illness. Jerry's
Okay.
was physical illness that was not being treated
Oh,
properly.
wow.
And I was able to get advocacy from my good friend Eric Brown. Eric, do you mind maybe sharing ideas you might have?
Sure. So without getting into too much depth while we're on a recorded Zoom, I would encourage first to reach out to the local Center for Independent Living that covers the area where this individual is. And Danielle and I can get you those resources. We have contact information through registration, so we can get that to you. What Alice is referring to is there are organizations specifically that work on advocacy for folks with disabilities, mental health being a disability. And those
Okay.
folks can help navigate relationships with the people at the jails to make sure that needs are being met related to disability. So I would
Okay.
start with the local centers for independent living, wherever that is. There is a center for independent living in every county in our country. So I would start with them, and then also find out who your protection and advocacy organization is. So here in Illinois, that's Equipped for Equality. Oftentimes, those folks will also get involved and try to push for systemic change.
What was the last, you said a protection, what was the name? Because I'm writing this down.
Protection and advocacy organization. And if Danielle, we can pull contact information. One of us can reach out to you and get some more specifics and send you some
Okay,
resources.
great. Thank
Yes.
you so much.
Yep, no
And
problem.
Thank you.
I wanted to add what Eric was saying, both the last organization that he mentioned and Centers for Independent Living. Their services are free. So
Great.
don't worry that it's gonna cost. I know cost is always a huge issue, though their services are free.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Good luck. I really hope that you're able to connect with them soon.
I do not see any more questions. Does anyone else want to hop off mute and ask? I know we just hit 7 o'clock, so. Oh, and my dog's prancing.
I just wanted to say thank you guys. I'm actually a sister of somebody who's been incarcerated for 30 years. And I'm working on my master's degree, and my focus this semester has been lowering recidivism by implementing reentry programs with mental health and addiction focus. And so, like, I actually just happened to see this pop up on a Facebook ad a few weeks ago and decided that I would jump on and learn some more. So, I really appreciate you guys. Your stories were very inspiring. Um, my brother is serving a natural life sentence on a wrongful conviction. So,
Wow.
anybody out
Okay.
there with faith and prayer and all the good vibes, he just got denied his Joel Coleman petition for his medical stuff. So, but you know, there's a plan. God has a plan, and he definitely helps a lot of people where he's at. So,
Mm.
but yeah, definitely, like, I would love any more information. Yeah, so the Innocence Project unfortunately will not take him because it was a very new DNA case, and
Mm.
he's also in Illinois. So
Mm.
there's some like technicalities there.
Okay.
So yeah, he's tried for all of that.
Mm.
But so
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
anyhow, any information though, like any extra, I don't know if you guys can do email lists or if you guys have any kind of information. I'm always wanting to learn. That's kind of what I want to do, actually. I think is get into research and policy in this area. So
Mhm. That's amazing.
yeah,
I think it's so needed.
yeah, it's definitely a passion of mine. So
Thank
I just wanted
you.
to share that, and thank you guys
I
again for
appreciate that.
sharing your story. I can definitely relate to you and the, needing support and feeling just like the oddball out in many conversations. I mean, I grew up
Sure.
like that,
Yeah.
but yeah, so for sure. And yeah, he lost his our mom a year ago. She passed away, and it was hard, so listening to
So,
you talk
yeah.
about emotions, and you can't share emotions, and yeah, so but
Wow.
yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing that stuff.
Yeah.
It's heavy. Alice, Jared, do you care if maybe we share your contact information with the group that was here tonight?
I was just gonna say, we'd be happy to, because that's something that we want to do. That's why we're doing this. We hope to be able to help others through this. It is, both of us would say, and we've both been through some really hard things, but this was the hardest to get. We were like, if we could do that, we could do anything.
All right. Yes.
So we're happy to, please feel free to share contact info.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all again for everyone's time. And I did record it eventually. So I got everything besides my introduction. So we're good.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yes,
having us.
of course. We'll see you soon. And even
Here
sooner
we
at a
meet.
support group training near you.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.